So let me call upon stage Tarun Gakkar, Head Procurement from Kellogg's, Swapnil Bhatt, Director Head of Packaging and Indirect Procurement, Cipla, Manisha Singh, Sourcing Business Leader, General Mills, Abhishek Jain, Head Indirect Procurement, Elastic Run, Sachin Mathur, Senior Vice President and Supply Chain, Dove Kettle, Mahesh Khetan, Vice President and Global Head Supply Chain, Grasim Industries, Ruchita Mishra, Vice President Procurement and Supply Chain, ISS Facilities Services India Private Limited. And I would also like to call upon Girish to lead the discussion ahead. Welcome.
We have a tough one ahead of us. We had a panel which kept all of us awake. So let's see if we can keep them animated. We have had a series of discussions since morning. We looked at multiple aspects of procurement. We talked about the strategic issues. We talked about technology and mapping. We talked about being bold and being the change that we need to see. I think that kind of underscores what we need as procurement professionals to be at this point in time. We go to a slightly different aspect of procurement. The question is the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail? We are talking about the tail and spends. 80% of our time is spent on 20% of value. And how much of value does it bring to what we are doing? And therefore, how do we manage this whole process in a very efficient manner and give away the pain points? So let's look at, in this panel, what we will be looking at is that all said and done, he asked about PPV, and we said we should not be looking at PPV. But the financial analyst sitting out there is going to look at only one figure. That is your bottom line. And that bottom line is driven by what you talked about. So we cannot be immune to that. Yes, we would not like it to be, but the harsh reality is that when the focus is on cash flow, the focus is on bottom line, and when the CEO's pay is directly based on the amount of profits that the organization makes, then you and I are under pressure always to create the right kind of profits. So when we do that, let me start by taking the bull directly by horn. Should we take a direct aim at indirect spend? Or are there any opportunities there that we can talk, that we can tap? Probably Tarun, you could start with.
Sure. Hello. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Girish and the ISCM team for having us here. So we are past the critical stage after lunch, so I guess we can have some good discussion. While our topic is a little dry, but we'll try to make it more interactive. So you asked the question, whether we can take the bull by its horn. So on the indirect side, and my last few years in the business has been more on the direct side though, but indirect is something that is very close to my heart. I've done it for many, many years. So I think on the indirect side, it's not just about the cost reduction, right? It's also about what's the value that you get out of that spend. And the typical thing that comes to my mind is on the marketing sides or the media side. So the amount of money that you spend with a media partner, right? It's never about how much is the contract value that's going to be, but it's more about what are we going to get out of that contract, right? So is there a GRP that we are going to get? How many campaigns are we possibly going to extract out of that value and all of that? So I guess it's in this spend, it's not just about how much are you spending, but it's also about what is the value that you can derive out of that contract, right? That's number one. And number two, I think, this is a spend where, which is unlike the cost plus model which you have on the direct side, right? So it's not as clear, as objective as you have in the direct side. So you got to have, more experience. You need to have people who have come from those kind of industries. So, while I was working in Nestle, and I know there are a few colleagues from Nestle here, we made sure that we were getting people on the indirect side from the industry so that they could actually, challenge the people coming from the agencies or from different supply chain industries, so that because they were the insiders. Sitting outside, it's very difficult to take those calls. So to answer your question and to possibly culminate my this thing is that, one, we should get the maximum value out of the contract, and number two, get the right set of people with the right set of objectives and capability for driving those spends. If that answers, thanks.
Thanks, Tarun. Yes, the unfortunate, somebody talked about marketing, especially, they say that 50% of marketing works, but the unfortunate part is that we do not know which 50%. So we are somewhere caught in that kind of a dilemma. Manisha, if I could request you here, one of the problems that, unlike direct spend, what happens in indirect spend is that it is happening all over the country. Every plant of yours, every offices of yours. So here you have something that's happening in a very distributed environment, and we are trying to impose a centralized command control module on it. How does this dynamics work out? What are the kind of challenges that will come up?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, if you could hold it close.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Manisha, and I'm working with General Mills. So very rightly said, say in direct categories, there are a lot of tools and apparatus available. You have, say, talent pool who is working continuously to reduce cost, to make material available. There is focus from the management, and in general, there is a lot of work which has happened in this area. But when it comes to indirect spends, I think it has only drawn traction in the last couple of years when, we have observed that there is a inflation to the tune of 7 to 8% and a growth equivalent to it year after year. It has become an important segment right now. So the challenge with indirect spend is that it is lying in different buckets across different parts of the organization. And the budget owners are different. Unlike direct categories, wherein the sourcing team own the budget and they are also responsible to deliver performance, right? Here it is something which is very unique, and that is a bigger part of the challenge, because of which it is very, very essential and important to really live the spirit of collaboration, right? So typically a procurement professional is supposed to deliver results, but in indirect sourcing, it must be that you collaborate with the business owners or the function leaders to understand what the need is, what the requirement is, and then collaborate across with implementing the right tools and processes to bring out the best value out of those spends. So it is very different and typical, because of which I think one of the things which are done by different bigger organizations is to really work in a different way, wherein you have, say, a working task force, which represent multidisciplinary, say, representation from different parts of the organization, and then they lead those negotiations or conversations, so that all the aspects of, say, what you need in terms of the right SLAs are covered, what the right KPIs are to measure the vendor performance, and you don't only look at the overall cost, but you look at the value that is brought to the table. And this has become really very important in the last 2 years, I would say, because there had been a lot of defaults, right? And logistic is one of the examples that I would like to pick. Logistic, though, used to be very small part of the overall spend, but in the last 2 years, we all have heard about ocean freight, international congestion, containers not available, how do you really ensure that the export part of your business continues without any kind of disruption, right? So to have the right set of suppliers and vendors who are able to show resilience and are able to support you in the right time is very, very important. Having said that, even the long-term contracts have not worked out. People had to resort to spot bookings and purchases. And therefore, if you have dependency on one type of, say, strategy, it becomes very, very difficult. So the strategy has to be holistic. It has to look at different aspects and not really cost, and ensure that how can you really work with reliable supply partners so that you are able to get what you want even during very tumultuous time. So that is very important. So the second part, which I said, one is collaboration. Second is identifying the right partners and then work with them. Have those, say, commercial arrangements, say, clauses that really help you, though I would say that it is more of a relationship that has come as a help during these times versus, say, any kind of clause that can protect you. But that is second, very important in indirect spend. Third, I would say that there is a need to implement, say, different digitized tools and platforms which can really make your life easier. For an example, in travel, right? Earlier, there used to be people who would book the tickets and they would be like 20-30% of the cost sitting out of overheads. Now you have very smart platforms, Make My Trip Biz, etc., wherein you can, I mean, decentralize and all these employees can book their tickets themselves. So though it is a small part of the overall organization spend, but taking those right steps at the right time, making the right partnerships can really help you solve a lot of problems later on when you as an organization grow, and then you don't need to have, say, a bigger team booking your tickets, right? So that is one thing that I would say, that really the need to leverage with the right, say, platforms, tools, processes is extremely important. Yeah, I would leave to that thought.
Thanks, Manisha. In fact, indeed, having the right set of tools and the ability to work across the organizational silos and create some kind of leverage which we can. Swapnil, if I could come, yeah? No, I'm going to Swapnil before I come to you. I'm just juggling it up.
Sure.
Yeah. Swapnil, if I could come to you. Having spent your time a lot in indirect procurement, one of the things that what both of them talked also requires us to have the right set of tools and visibility.
Right.
How do we manage these, and what is the kind of state of the industry when it comes to visibility and tools for the indirect spends?
Sure. See, I think PR to PO conversion is a given. I mean, that has to be, you have to have no-touch PR to PO conversion, and that's something which most of the platforms are already providing. That kind of takes away or brings in a lot of efficiencies in terms of your the team's processing time. It also brings a lot of visibility in terms of the vendors being aware of when the PO is going to come, what kind of ordering process is going to be, what kind of forecast they should expect. While so as I say that that's a given. So what we really are looking at now is something which is more based on, I mean, the way I look at indirect procurement or indirect spends is very fragmented. So you don't have a forecast. So you don't know what's going to get ordered when. You can't, I mean, you may collaborate with the business or the users, but they still don't have that kind of visibility in terms of engineering or MRO spends, in terms of what kind of things they're going to order, they're going to require, when the breakdown is going to happen. So it's very difficult to predict in terms of what is required when. However, things like some kind of analytical engines, the NLP-based engines, will help you determine what kind of procurement has been happening for the last 3 months, 6 months. It also gives you a benefit in terms of determining what is your saving opportunity, because it tells you what has been the pricing at what you are procuring, and it, to some extent, it also can predict what kind of pricing will happen in the future based on some commodity indexes. So that's the trend that we are looking at. That's the way we are looking in terms of implementing as part of our roadmap, which brings a lot of visibility, to the internal team in terms of what they are going to buy and at what price they are going to buy. Apart from that, we always have those collaboration tools where you are giving that visibility to the suppliers as well. So that's the path, or those are the tools that we are actually looking at implementing at Cipla.
Yeah, because with the kind of tools that we are talking about, we are looking at a lot more integrated and lot more efficient processes there. Abhishek, if now I could come to you. One of the things that are changing in procurement is on the platforms which are coming in for procurement, B2B online platforms and aggregator platforms. How can we use them, and what are the kind of advantages that you see in indirect procurement for these platforms that you have?
Hello. Okay. So the platform that we are discussing right now, since morning we have been discussing procurement tools and other things like SAP, Ariba. We have got partners, Kemia and M-Junction sitting over there. But if I take example from my own organization, where till today we were working on a very piecemeal kind of approach in indirect procurement. For example, a laptop. Even though in organizations laptop or desktops are considered as a tool for the employee who is joining new, our organization is into expansion mode in a big way. So our HR has normally gives us a projection of 6 months. So we are hiring, say, 1,000 people in next 6 months. But how many people will join in next month, they don't know. So because joining dates keep on changing. So laptops as a category is coming into indirect instead of a direct procurement. So it was happening in a piecemeal basis, and suddenly in 1 month, the joining jumped from 100 to 400. And it was a knee-jerk action required to buy the laptops. And then you have to buy it from any dealer who has got the laptop category which is available with them. But over a period of last 2 to 3 months, we developed it with Dell and Lenovo that we have got our own BIOS created with them, and we moved on to their own platform, Dell online platform. We are ordering it on their platform instead of issuance of purchase order through us, and that is only a back-end process. But we are using Dell's platform to order and fixing the price for next 3 months, 4 months. That's how we are trying to procure them, and we are giving them an advance intimation that, okay, we may require, say, 200 laptops per month, but yes, there can be a spike. So they are supporting us in creating a partner for us who will be holding stocks for us in India. So both ways, we are buying it direct from Dell China also, and we are buying it from the local dealer also, but they are supporting us. But now with people like M-Junction, Kemia, and other SAP, Ariba, or Oracle Financials also are coming up with different kind of tools where we are trying to catalog the items which we want to procure on day-to-day basis for e-procurement also. We want to move, like Swapnil said, do away with PR to PO process. Once the request comes, it automatically converts into PO because the rates and the catalog item is there in the system, and the user just had to, just like we are ordering from, say, a marketplace, similar way we were trying to build in the internal system. So that's the going forward process for it. But there are other items also, like, like Manisha mentioned, logistics. Logistics is not only by ocean freight, but in case of organizations, it is more about, say, movement of your employees, sales and marketing employees, or operation and maintenance employees across the state. How will they move? So today, earlier they used to hire one vehicle dedicatedly for a month. But then the cost becomes higher. As the fuel prices go up, the cost becomes higher. And management wants to do away with the monthly vehicles. So then you have gone into, but then now the network of Ola, Uber has moved up. So management is saying you first process it. And Ola, Uber, I got a direct contract with the organization. So wherein there is a business account and you use it and it gets paid off. So you are using the other platform.
Interesting, because as platforms are coming, there are a number of new platforms also which are now available, your Meeshos and Moglix, which also offer some kind of aggregation capabilities and cataloging capabilities which come in, which can make life a lot more easier to understand. Earlier, we used to have this industrial product finder, which was the Bible for the procurement professional, and they used to make a lot of money on it. Today, that business is out. Sachin, if I were to take you up on all that we talked about, gives us a huge amount of data. How do we use this data? What are the insights that we would like to derive from this data?
So, I would say in today's time, data is the window to gain insights from. And in our case, since we had multiple locational operations, we have 6 plants in India, 3 in Brazil, 2 in US, and 2 in Europe. So when on indirect spend, if I give you an example, we collected all the logistics spends in one single place. That how much is our own logistics spend, and we then partnered with Ernst & Young to run a cost reduction program. And I can tell you, last year when everybody in the world had suffered with logistics cost, we had saved much more than what we saved on our raw material procurement. And if you compare the size, it's 1:10 kind of a ratio. So when we look at data and when we know that, okay, this may not be my core competence, the next logical step comes in that, do you know the right person who knows or for whom this is their bread and butter? And then collaborating with them is something which can really add value, because no matter what analysis we do, unless we do any actioning on it, it will not help. And since it's a tail spend kind of a procurement, it will never find that much of focus for entire procurement team. So A, analyzing the data, B, developing those collaborations with the right people, which gets you the savings and value out of it. It gets you the reliability. For example, in same example of logistics cost, when you are working with company like Ernst & Young, who also are an auditing firm, not many people or not many suppliers will disown the contract. For everybody else, they may disown saying that the market rate has gone up. So probably that's where the trick lies, that what do you do with that analysis and the data? And the second step, which is that knowing fully well, and that's where I think the forum like this creates a opportunity, or let's say a sharing platform wherein we all can learn from each other, that if I have certain spend for which I don't know who the right person could be or who could be the most knowledgeable people who can help us out, and that's where it can add a lot of value to the organization.
When I started asking this question, I first wanted to open by saying that, data is the new oil, a phrase made famous by Mukesh Ambani. But then I now realize that oil is the new oil and not data. So that's why I didn't open with that. However, to come back to what you said, yes, we need to have the right kind of insights. We have the ability. Sometimes we may need external help to look at the data, because someone else looking at it from a very impartial kind of a framework can give you insights which you probably do not think, because you're conditioned to operate in a certain way. Someone from outside is not conditioned. That conditioning difference is what adds value to analytics like this. Mahesh, if I pick you up on this, when we talk of data, we talk of analytics. The biggest challenge that we have is in defining what is it that we need to analyze, what is the area where we need insights. Garbage in, garbage out is a very commonly understood phrase today. And therefore, to avoid the GIGO phenomena, we also need to understand what is the insights that I need to seek. How easy is it for us to do that? And how do we then take it to the right person within the organization? There are two challenges in this.
Yeah, Girish, thank you for that question. And let me tell you, it's very easy. So why I'm saying it's very easy is, see, you said, data is a new oil, and that's not true. Oil is oil. Now there are so many demand planning professionals here and demand planning organization. They won't buy this. For them, data is their entire life and data is their bread and butter. Without data, they cannot do anything. So anyway, now coming to your question, how much data is good and how much analytics. So, I mean, of course, we cannot keep on analyzing the things infinitely. We have to reach to a decision-making and conclusion at some stage, and it has to be communicated to the top management, to the CEO, the director, or the chairman of the organization, and finally, the decision has to be taken. But, I mean, particularly in this kind of uncertainty, you know, what we have seen last few years, analytics becomes really important. Of course, too much of anything is not good. But imagine, you know, what Sachin had been mentioning, and in the previous panel, we heard the gentleman from ITC saying that buy oil next Monday because it's going to go up. So how do you predict that without data, without analytics? Import-export data of all the countries. I mean, that's a huge data to analyze. If you extract the import-export data of India alone, it is so huge. So how much the import quantity has gone up over the last 6 months to India, how much export quantity has gone up, and it's not just India. Import-export data of Europe, USA, China in particular. And some of these data are not easily available. So I'll come to the other point where I'm strictly against doing any kind of saving in indirect spend. I'm very much against that. I'm always saying that your indirect spend should always go up year on year. But I mean, if you allow me, I'll speak on that later. But the data analytics is important. It has to be limited. Whatever is needed for the business. For example, for our business, we are, I mean, like Sachin's business, our business is also a global business. We have manufacturing facilities in different countries. So, and we buy raw material, we import raw material for these manufacturing facilities in these countries. So though we have contracts, we do a lot of spot ad hoc buying, wherein we have to decide whether we buy now or we buy after a couple of weeks. Now for that, all these global chemical indices which are published, those become very important for us. But once the index is published, it's all over. The price is published, you have to follow the price period. You cannot do anything after that. Now how do you influence those indices? Can you create the capability in your organization to influence the oil index? Or there are so many products downstream of the oil, of which the indices, global indices are published, region-wise indices are published. Can you build that capability in your organization to influence those indices? That requires some analytics. That requires tremendous spend on indirect costing, indirect spend. I mean, you have to attend this kind of conferences. You have to spend more, your number of team members attending these kind of events, conferences, trade shows, not just in India, but globally, has to go up. You have to increase the number of subscriptions of market reports, published reports. So that competency in the team needs to be built in a way where you can debate with the people who are publishing the indices and influence, reach at a stage where you can start influencing the indices. So data analytics is important. Too much of anything is not good. Too much data, then, I mean, infinitely you are doing analytics, you're not reaching the conclusion. That itself is not good. Every month you have to reach to the conclusion, you have to convince to the top management with the data and with the analytics. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, analysis by paralysis. Sorry, paralysis by analysis. Right, something to be avoided. But I think all of us are so used to now data and analytics, and you don't hear any conference without a data and an analytics, but they don't have the paralysis part, they don't talk about it. Somewhere you need to draw a line. Before I come to you, if I could just quickly check with Ruchita on a couple of issues. We spoke on all these issues on data, on analytics, on tools, on capabilities, frameworks. The crucial part of all this is us, the human behind the man behind the machine, or the human behind the machine to be. What are the capabilities that we need to create in this new scenario? And before that, what is the kind of scenario that you're seeing evolving in indirect spend?
Okay. So Girish, so first of all, I belong to an industry where the indirect of all of you is my direct. It's my core spend, is my only spend. I belong to ISS Facility Management, and that's the only core spend that we have.
So my problem here is probably the biggest, is what I can say. Having said that, what is so much fuss about this indirect? So we all see it's the most low-hanging fruit. We all want to attack indirect because everyone is refined or developed or have gone to a notch level in the direct spend. But in the indirect, though the scope is there, we still end up failing. Why? Is disintegrated. The number of SKUs in a cable would be say 10 or 20, but the number of SKUs in stationery would be 500. Think of those. So number of SKUs are scattered, expenses are scattered, and is intangible. So I think Manisha talked about travel, someone talked about travel, logistic. Try changing one thing, try changing your marketing expenses, try changing your vending machine, you change from Nestle to CCD or vice versa, it immediately causes employee grievance. It leads to dissatisfaction, and that's where we come into picture. And we are also a user, right? So you cannot look indirect spend like a zero-based costing, okay, this is what it is and this is my target price. That view has to be very, very different. That thought process behind negotiating indirect spend. So gone are the days when you only talk about saving. It has to be a value addition, and that's the theme of our topic. And it has to be think, Girish, more from a perspective how you can improve upon SOW, how you can talk about more KPI, how you can develop your core skills within your team to comprehend the kind of data you have. So I'll just highlight one quick issue without naming an organization. And this was one of my past organization, wherein the time I was hired, we realized that there is a 600 crore of spend bucketed as miscellaneous. Now what is miscellaneous? So everything which does not come under a bucket is a miscellaneous. And if we don't do this data analysis, it's probably gone year by year in the SAP term and no one looks at the miscellaneous. But in that bar chart, if the first standing item is miscellaneous, then we have a problem. So have to look this spend in a very different way, not as a cost saving tool. What value addition you can bring in, and what I think help over here, we talked about technology, we talked about data, is also a relationship with the vendors. So more and better SRM, KPIs, I think Abhishek talked about catalog tools. So catalogs help. And why do we want to have our solution? Why are we not ready to adopt vendor solution? So there are a lot of organization aggregators you spoke about. So there are fantastic solutions available, but we probably as a procurement guys have a habit of customizing everything. So can we go above that and try to pitch in and understand supplier solution which can give us an edge and a better way of tracking this spend is what I'll say.
Thank you. That's indeed the core of the whole issue. Why do we need to target everything at the indirect spend level and focus on that? While it is distributed, we need to have the right amount of tools, we need to have the right amount of, and we also need to have the right amount of, the right kind of people who would look at the data to create the kind of actionable insights that we need. We are at the bell has gone off, I got it. We are not in a digital environment, we still are in a very analog environment where the time limit is whispered. I thank each one of you. Yes, we did cover a lot, and I'm sorry I did not open it up to the panel. I've been told that I've got 2 minutes to wrap this up. So I'm sorry that I couldn't open up to the audience. To you, you're not the audience, you're a part of the, most of you are a part of the discussions and partners. We looked at the entire spectrum of indirect spend by looking at it from, is it necessary? And if so, what kind of frameworks do we create for it across the organization? What are the kind of involvement which happens? And finally, we looked at the data, the tools, the techniques, and what Ruchita very nicely put it as the miscellaneous, and how to break that miscellaneous up into what it actually is. Anything miscellaneous is not a very happy sign. The CFOs hate that. They call it the suspense account. Whatever you don't understand is suspense. Thankfully, we don't use suspense as, suspense. We just put it as miscellaneous. I thank you all for the time that you have taken to come here. I would like to present a small token of appreciation to each one of you.